Hello and welcome to another episode of Archery Releases Ad Nauseum. Today I'm going to talk about Hotshot Archery's thumb release line. They recently put out some new offerings at the end of 2022, so I figured I'd touch on them before I started buying all the stuff that's been released at ATA. There's some good stuff coming out from ATA and some stuff with some really weird sales pitches. I'm just gonna do it right here. There's this something. It's been bugging me since I watched this video, and I wanted to. I've been kind of want to get it out and try to pick it apart a little bit. So there's a company that put out a new product at ATA, and I don't know why I'm dancing around the issue. It's Trueball. So Trueball is putting out a new release called the Trident, which is the tri-hook version of the blade, basically. And the claim that they're making on the new release is that it's better than the current release, which is the blade, which uses the same handle. They didn't even take this part out. Like, it's the tri-hook with still a little hook thing, so it's not even really... It doesn't even really have nice lines to it. It could be nice, but I'm going to find out soon enough. But they're claiming that the Trident is better than the blade because the differences in point of impact between the way you're supposed to hold it, like this, is less significant when you turn the release over 180 degrees and shoot it this way. I think they're trying to say that the variance is in angle due to form inconsistency, because you might not have it right, or if you're at a different angle or something, even though you're supposed to bend at your waist when you do angled shots, will affect point of impact less significantly, but the difference is a quarter inch at 20 yards with the new one, the Trident, and 5/8 of an inch with the blade when you turn it over 180 degrees, which no one is going to do. I'm going to hold on to that idea when I actually get a hold of one and do my little ad nauseum spiel with it and explore it further. But in the meantime, let's talk about Hotshot. So I spend a lot of time on classified sections and Facebook groups and archery talk classifieds and things like that, and I don't really see a whole lot of hotshot releases available on the secondhand market. And this could potentially be for two different reasons. One is that there aren't that many in circulation, and the other is that those who buy them tend to hang on to them. I don't know which one it is exactly. I'd like to think it's the latter because they are a good brand and they fit well into what I'd like to call the mid-range of handheld releases. They're sear-activated releases priced similarly to Carter releases, but they also have a more budget-oriented line with a different mechanism. They also have at least one feature that makes them more customizable than Carter and other releases in both price brackets, and that's their thumb barrel assembly. Alright, so the current lineup of Hotshot thumb releases, I don't have them all just yet, but I'm working on it. There are two different series of releases that Hotshot puts out. One of them is a sear-activated version, and then there's also what I like to call a lever style, which is the closer to like a budget version. So the first of the bunch is the X Spot. The X Spot comes in 3-finger aluminum, has an enclosed index finger, and a straight handle. This is actually an X Spot brass knuckles, which is a brass 3-finger version of the X Spot, and probably one of the heaviest releases are out. This is a giant hunk of brass right here. So along with the X Spot, you also have the X Spot Deuce, which is a true 2-finger version of the X Spot, and it comes in brass or aluminum. I call it a true 2-finger because unlike releases like the Knock-On series, it doesn't have a nub to put your ring finger. So it's 2-finger and really is a 2-finger, and you're only going to be able to use it as a 2-finger. So next in the line is the Hotshot Tempest, which comes in 4 fingers or 3 fingers, has similar ergonomics and a straight handle shape as the X Spot, but has an open index finger, and it only comes in red aluminum. The X Spot comes in brass or aluminum. So both versions, the Deuce and the 3-finger version of the X Spot. So next up, I'm going to have to scroll that back a little bit because I'm going off script. Next you have the Eclipse, which is a black anodized aluminum body with a pronounced swept handle and comes in 3 or 4 fingers. And I don't have a 3-finger version, I just have the 4 right now. It's hard to find these in 3 fingers, or at least used. Like I said, that's a bit of an issue, even though it's been out for quite some time. So next up in the thumb release line is the Ember, which is a new for end of 2022. Comes in 3 or 4 fingers, only comes in anodized aluminum, has a swept handle, and comes in 3 or 4 fingers. Next up is the Hookup. The Hookup is an open hook version of the Ember, though technically it came first. Comes in anodized aluminum, only comes in purple, and is available in 3 or 4 fingers. This is the only open hook version of a hotshot release, so none of the other thumb releases actually have an open hook. Random aside, if you try to look up info on the hotshot hookup, make sure you include the word archery in your Google search. Otherwise, your search results will be very, very different. Believe you me. Moving along. Okay, so the lever-style thumb releases consist of the Vapor. The Vapor is black aluminum, comes in 3 or 4 fingers, and has an orange hook and trigger stem. So it also has a little bit more pronounced finger beds, so they're a little more pronounced in the hook, so it's going to have a little bit more of a fitted feel to it. Next is the Vapor 2. The Vapor 2 is a dehorned version of the Vapor and comes in black anodized aluminum, comes in 3 or 4 fingers, and instead has a blue hook and trigger stem instead of an orange one. I'm not Norm Macdonald, I can't get away with that. Next is and lastly, actually, is the Hotshot Haze. It is basically the Vapor 2, even though this came first, and is slotted to attach to a wrist strap, which is included with it, has a blue hook and a gray anodized aluminum body instead of black to distinguish it from the Vapor 2. And that's it for them. So each hotshot release comes with a small set of Allen keys to make all the adjustments, except for take it apart, which usually most release companies don't give you the means to disassemble the thing. So in the case of the Ember, it came with 3 Allen keys. One is for the tension set screw, another is for the travel adjustment set screw, and the set screw that locks down the thumb barrel. The third one is to loosen the 2 bolts that attach the thumb barrel post to the trigger stem, and then adjust it that way. So all of these screws can be adjusted with a folding key set that many of us typically carry, the yellow one that is made by Bondhos, if that's how you pronounce it. Each hotshot thumb release also comes with a multi-axis thumb barrel assembly that bolts onto the trigger stem with 2 screws and has a large thumb barrel, some of which are engraved or marked with the hotshot logo, and some of them are not. They all feel like they're made out of aluminum. It does not have additional threaded holes on the post to change the height of the barrel. However, the top of the barrel post is threaded and the thumb barrel screws to the top of it, so you can unlock the barrel via the set screw and then adjust the height by rotating the thumb barrel up or down and getting it roughly to where you want it, adjusting it to the angle that you want it, and then tightening down the set screw. This isn't the most precise of systems, but it's more than what you get with a Carter, which is just a basic thumb barrel bolted to the trigger stem. And if you go with a Haze or Vapor, it's way more than you get with any of their similarly priced competitors. Activated thumb releases come with a set of springs to tune the trigger to your preferences. The 2 Embers I just bought actually came with the weakest of the 3 springs installed, so they're just about breathe on them and get them to go off. So I immediately went for the heaviest of the 3 springs, which is the one I'm going to be using. So it's got a little more oomph to it. The springs are the same length, but the thickness of the wire determines their strength. Ideally, I prefer not to have or have to keep track of extra parts, and having a fully self-contained system is my preference. Like the Carter releases, they have one spring that covers the entire range of tensions, but it's better than having to purchase the parts piecemeal in order to get the things where I want them. Take note, UltraView, it would be nice if you didn't cost as much and came with more. The Hotshot Haze and the Vapor. The Haze comes with a wrist strap, which I didn't display because it's in the box somewhere, but it comes with a wrist strap so you can attach it to your wrist. But the Haze and the Vapor came with the Allen keys and no additional springs, since the release relies on trigger travel instead of tension, so you don't need additional springs, and even if you did, you'd have to take the casing apart to get to the one spring that operates the whole mechanism. All the Hotshot thumbs come with an extra set screw that probably goes to the thumb barrel, but I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, there's an extra set screw in there, and I don't know what it goes to. Maybe the travel adjustment, but I don't know. So all of the Hotshot releases are solid handles, so there are no changeable finger extensions or adjustable sweep. The Hotshot thumbs hover in the range of medium, though some are more of a small medium and others are roomier. If you don't have access to a shop that carries them, it may be tricky to figure out which ones will fit your hand, though if you do know what your preferences are in terms of handle sweep, there is something in the line for you. Luckily, I have a solution for the if you can't get your hands on it. Check out my website at artandarchery.com, where I have a link to a Google Drive folder with printable PDFs with 1:1 scale pictures of every release I own, including the whole Hotshot line that I just updated. They are free to download, but if you feel the desire to do so, there is a link at the bottom of the page with a PayPal link in case you might want to leave me a tip for providing this service. It isn't expected, but it is very appreciated. So each of the Hotshot handles are straight and have no taper, and the finger beds are mostly rounded with a shallow flat running down the center. You can see that. The handles are typical in thickness compared to most releases. Like my, yeah, they're pretty much pretty standard in terms of thickness. They're not overly thick and they're not overly thin. So I find them to be pretty comfortable in terms of drawing the bow, especially with 60 to 70 pounds, so in the higher poundage. I do have releases that are thinner and they're not nearly as comfortable to draw with, and they're also more expensive. So one thing about the newer offerings that's noteworthy, some releases look and feel smaller as a 3-finger, but when you go up to a 4-finger, they suddenly feel huge. They also look huge too. So the newer Hotshots, being the Ember, Hookup, Haze, and Vapor, are like that. The 3-finger version I find comfortable and almost perfect for my hand size. Like I said, I wear a size small glove. However, the 4-finger version feels clunky and too big. That's because the pinky finger bed is the same size or larger than the middle and ring finger. So if we look at the Eclipse by comparison, it's smaller, and the other fingers are almost, well, the 4th finger is almost too small. So if you look at the difference between these handles, there's a pretty significant difference. The Tempest by comparison feels about right. It's not too big. It's not too big. See, you can just visibly see how much bigger the handle is on the new Ember as opposed to the Tempest. And the Tempest is not a small release to begin with either. So the handle not being tapered doesn't help either. So if you have like this huge finger bed here for the pinky and not having a taper, then it really feels way bigger than it should be in your hand. So if you have big hands, though, that's a different story, and this might be perfect for you. But for me, with my little dinky fingers, I'm going to stick with the 3s, with the 3-finger versions of the releases. So I'm just going to kind of speed around the the fit and finish things. The anodized aluminum is mostly smooth to a glossy finish. Some of them have more of like a satin finish that's a little bit less reflective. Like this older Tempest has a glossy finish, and this newer Ember is more of like a satin, less reflective finish. And one 3-finger version of the Tempest and the Eclipse has almost a grittier finish with black-coated hardware. I think that's probably intended for hunting purposes, or trying to be a little bit more discreet, perhaps. And then most of the other ones are polished, although I do have an Ecstasy hinge from Hotshot that also has a black hook. So I don't know what determines what finish each model gets. It's kind of like asking for a certain color for Carter. Of Carter release, you just get whatever they did during that that run. Since I have similar models that have different finishes. Likewise, the fasteners for the cases are either black oxide or bare stainless. The set screws are mostly black oxide, except for the X spot, for whatever reason, the brass knuckles. The brass releases are nice and glossy. Some of the thumb barrels have some wear marks or inconsistencies in the finish around the threading, but some of them don't. So there seems to be some minor quality issues in terms of what you get out of the package. Like some of the coatings and things aren't the best, or they have some inconsistencies around wear areas. So that's something that's a little bit concerning. It's not something that isn't going to happen eventually, and you're going to end up with wear on it. I just don't like it when it comes out of the box like that. So a couple things about trigger and adjustability. The thumb barrel apparently needs to be removed in order to get to the trigger travel, unless you have a set of really stubby Allen keys. This thumb barrel is going to get into the way if you want to be able to adjust that set screw. Not a big deal, but it is an extra step. The trigger brake is crisp at about a quarter turn off of failure. This one's actually set up for more travel. So about a quarter turn off of failure, meaning you would cock the release, you would tighten the travel screw until the sear releases, and then back it off a quarter turn. With increased travel, which is my preference, the triggers are a little gritty as I sit here at my desk playing with them, but at full draw, it's not as noticeable. That may smooth out with time, but it is worth noting. So there are other releases that cost way more that have a significantly smoother pull when it comes to setting your release up with a lot of travel. So one thing that is worth giving Hotshot a lot of credit, it doesn't matter which one of these I pick up, each thumb release from Hotshot is milled and has a pin on the spine of the release to attach a lanyard. One exception is the Hotshot Haze, though, because that one's already slotted to be used with a wrist strap. So this is something that should be on every handheld release, in my opinion, regardless of whether you actually use one or not. Because, yeah, most of these are kind of geared towards hunting. Even in Target, some people like to use will use a wrist strap so they don't have to worry. But like I said, any one of these picked up, regardless of whether it's Target or hunting, has the capability of attaching a lanyard, whereas other releases like the Stan Onyx still do not have an option in terms of putting a lanyard on it, except for trying to stuff it through the little exposed area of the clamping space for the finger extension. So, kudos to Hotshot for making sure that that is an option for everybody. So the X-Bot, Eclipse, Tempest, Hookup, and Ember all share the same sear-activated single-action mechanism. There is a cocking button on the spine, and you have to press the hook closed with your finger. The hook actually opens away from your face, unlike a good number of other releases like this. So you're going to be using your middle finger to press it closed and into the D-loop. And that actually makes closing the hook on releases with an enclosed middle finger like the X spot easier than releases where the hook opens toward your face like the Carter Just Because and its relatives, because you have to kind of you have to either get your middle finger in to close it or your index finger up and around the enclosed hook. The shape of the head makes it very easy to close the hook, and since the hook opens like a swinging door, then getting it onto the D-loop is actually pretty easy. So in terms of hookup, for what it is, though it's getting a little bit old-fashioned, I would say, to have releases where you have to press the hook closed, this one still works out well enough, and everything's nice and rounded, so it's not an uncomfortable affair. The Haze, Vapor, and Vapor 2 are, well, so that's the Haze, that's the Vapor 2, and that's the Vapor, are a lever-style mechanism where the thumb barrel is linked to the hook and they both move together. So the speed at which you press the thumb barrel determines the speed at which the hook opens. The internals on these also appear to be anodized aluminum. I don't know what that does in terms of their durability. I know that's part of what makes them cheaper. But this type of release, if you're into pulling through the shot, it actually kind of makes life a little bit easier because you can't really predict exactly when it's going to go off. So you get more of a surprise shot with one of these. That being said, it does require a lot more trigger travel in order. And this one, for whatever reason, it would seem like the newer ones, the hook doesn't open up immediately as you pull it. So there's something different. There's some sort of a little delay in the action for the newer versions of the release, unless I'm just looking at it wrong, and no, because it's not moving yet in the first little bit of travel, but it does require a lot more trigger travel in order to get the hook to release. But if that's something that you're used to, or you're looking to get into a thumb release, then these are usually a good option, because like I said, you get the multi-axis thumb barrel assembly and the simpler action. This is also, if you haven't noticed, dead silent when it works too. So there are discussions online constantly about what the quietest release is, or quietest thumb release, and so far you got stuff like the UV button, which is sear activated, but it does make noise, still pretty quiet. These are as quiet as you can possibly be. So the X Spot, the Tempest, the Eclipse, and the Vapor are the OG, if you will, line of thumb releases that have been out for a number of years. The X Spot was released in 2016, and I didn't bother to look into the rest. The Vapor apparently has been out for a very long time. The newer models, I should probably just stop it right. So the newer models, being the Haze, the Vapor 2, the Hookup, and the Ember, essentially got the equivalent of a slide melt and dehorm treatment of a handgun meant for concealed carry. Any sharp edges were rounded, and the finger beds are made shallower with the intent to make them as comfortable as possible. The handles are also very similar in shape, but the Ember and the Hookup are more swept, while the Haze and the Vapor 2 are straighter. So the ring fingers on these two, the Hookup and the Haze, are swept back a little bit further. They're also a little bit smaller, too, in sizing, so they're not exactly the same. The index finger bed, the heads are very similar, and so is the hook position. The hook position on the Haze and the Vapor 2 is a little bit to the left, or a little bit closer to your middle finger. Not that that's going to make a big difference, though if you straighten them out, they're pretty much the same. The sear-activated Hotshot releases retail for $235. Some of them, I think the brass ones are a little more expensive, but they can be found for around $200. They are directly comparable to Carter releases along the lines of the Target, Insatiable, Just Cuz, Just Because, or Fits Me, which is discontinued, but same thing. They all share the same internals, but with different handle sizes and sweeps, meaning the Carters. They all do the same thing. They all have the same mechanism, but just packaged in a different handle. Quality-wise, I think Carter edges out Hotshot somewhat. However, their move towards putting a CES trigger system, which eliminates travel adjustment in all their releases. That being said, you wouldn't know that from their website because it hasn't been updated in a while. Taking that adjustment away means somebody like me who actually wants trigger travel has to look somewhere else. So Hotshot retains a higher level of adjustability at the same price point and also has far better customer service, which I will discuss in a moment. It also has more adjustability in terms of the finger, in terms of the thumb barrel assembly and the ability to move it towards your thumb as opposed to the latter. The lever-style thumbs compete with items like the Trophy Ridge Precise, the TrueFire Edge, TrueBall Max Pro and Max Hunter, and to some extent the Cobra Harvester and B3 Exit. The Harvester and Exit technically have a more complex trigger system, but the feel on release is very similar. One nice thing about Hotshot releases is they sport a lifetime transferable, no questions asked warranty. This is one of those things I've had a chance to experience myself and was very pleased that the company will honor this regardless of how you come into possession of one of their releases. In my case, I had purchased a Hotshot Vapor on eBay, and it turns out it didn't have a spring. It didn't have the one single spring that was able to make it work. So I emailed them asking if there was any way for me to purchase it, and then told them how I got it. And they just asked for my address, and they sent me a couple. So that was awesome, and it shows it's also nice that they answer their emails too, because that's something that apparently some companies don't do, and you have to have a specific way to get in touch with them. Either you have to call them or, well, call them, because I don't think there's any other way to do it. You can email someone or call them. So, I mean, I don't think we should necessarily test it to see how much we can do to these releases. As we can see what happened to Craftsman, they still claim to honor their warranty for hand tools, but I don't think they'd replace something I deliberately cut in half so it would fit into a tight space like they would 20 years ago. So it's really, like I said, you can pretty much put these things through the ringer and they will fix it if it's broken. They will also refurbish their releases too. You could send them in, they'll take it apart, clean it, put a new set of springs in it, and replace any internals that have gone bad on them, and then send it back to you. So I think that's awesome, and that's something that you don't see every day in releases. Then and they'll also either fix it or replace it with something new if it's really something that's out. I had a friend of mine who has a Hotshot Tempest, and he sent it in, or he had something from Hotshot, and then he sent it in, and they sent him a brand new Tempest because I guess they weren't able to fix it. But yeah, they're pretty legendary for their customer service, and I think that's something that's very admirable. So overall, despite some of the there aren't really a whole lot of shortcomings. Just the only real major issue I would have with it is just a little bit of the machining marks on their stainless pieces, and then some of the finish markings on the threaded parts of these thumb barrel assemblies. But overall, I think Hotshot has some good options for those who want a solid piece of kit but cannot justify putting up the money that the more popular brands are now asking for their products, which is really starting to get ridiculous. I have this Mr. UV button is a prime example of a very expensive release that doesn't really do much that this one doesn't do also, other than being able to change it to a 2 or 4 finger release. So if you have a local shop that carries them, or you want to try something that isn't stamped with Ultraview, Stand, Carter, or TrueBall, give them a chance, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. So that about covers it. I will have, actually, this was written, I think I wrote this script like a week ago. I will have sizing sheets for all the new releases I get my hands on as soon as possible. I've already done that, so if you go onto my website and want to check out the sizing guide, I already have the PDFs uploaded for the Ember, the Hookup, and all the new stuff that I have, so I'm pretty well current, including the Hotshot Ecstasy, which is a hinge release, which I don't think I'm going to do a separate video on because, not to be mean, but they're kind of unremarkable. They're just a traditional moon, half moon style release. They do have hook retention, which is the, but they do the Scott rubber band thing, which I don't like, and it's also a pretty weak rubber band. So decent hinge, but I think there are better options available nowadays, and I'm kind of past the whole half moon type hinge thing. So while I have them and they're available for holsters, I don't think I'm going to do a review on them. But if you like what I'm doing, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and I will answer them as soon as I can. And until next time, take care, stay safe, and happy hunting. So you generally don't see a whole lot of hotshot releases available on the secondhand market, and this could potentially be for two reasons. One is that there aren't that many in circulation, and the other is that those who buy them tend to hang on to them.